everyone, it's Abby with the Bead Place and beadplace.net, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make a really fun, simple, easy, and casual knotted pendant using our vegan suede cord and some different sizes, shapes, and colors of glass beads. If you don't have items like this at home, definitely check out the link beneath this video where you'll find a kit that contains everything that you'll need to create this project. Besides the products that I've mentioned already, we'll also need some 8-pound fire line and a big eye beading needle. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind you to please give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps our channel out. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel because we put out new tutorials like this all the time. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is take our vegan suede cord and use this to form the frame of our pendant. So I have about 10 inches of cord here, and that's what I'm gonna use to make the size frame that I would like to use. The kit comes with 12 inches of cord, so you can make a bigger pendant or you can cut it down to make a smaller pendant. So the first thing I'm gonna do is bend about 1 inch of my cord down here, and that's going to form the bail of my pendant. Then I'm going to take the body of my cord and I'm going to figure out how large I want my beaded section to be. So I'm going to say about like this. So I'm going to make sure that I have my cord straight with no twists, and I'm going to start to spiral the tail end of my cord here around not only these two cords, but I also have to spiral it around this cord too in order to make sure that I'm kind of capturing everything together and holding this at the right size. So how I'm going to do that is I am going to form a barrel knot. Now, if you prefer to do a simpler knot than that, that's a-okay. Do whatever kind of knot you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spiral this around the back and then around the bail cords, and I'm including this as well. So I'm going to form a loose but uniform spiral, and I'm going to spiral it about 3 times. Now what I'm going to do is take the tail end of that cord and I'm going to work it up through those 3 wraps of the barrel knot. So now at this point, what we're going to do is make the adjustments that we need to make in order to get this to look how we want it to look. So I'm pretty happy with the way my loop looks and the way my knot looks. The only thing that I need to adjust now is this bail at the top. So how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to give it a good hard twist and make sure that I'm bringing that tail end around. All right, so now that I'm happy with the way that my frame looks, what I can do is take some scissors in and trim the tail ends so that they are the length that I want them to be. Now you can trim them really flush and close and get them really out of the way, or you can leave them hanging a little bit longer for a little bit more of a casual look. Totally up to you. So our next step is going to require some 8-pound fire line and a big eye beading needle. Look at that, it came out for me. So this big eye beading needle is really cool because it's a flexible needle, it's sharp, and it also opens to allow any cord size, which is awesome. These are my favorite because they're sharp, they're flexible, and they're durable. So they can withstand a lot of beading. So what we're gonna do is start with about 1 yard of our fire line. Now, depending on the size of the beads that you're using, you might need more or less than that. And then one trick that I can share with you when you're cutting your fire line, it's always important to pull some tension on it when you cut it. A lot of people have a hard time cutting through fire line, but if you pull a little bit of tension on it, it'll easily cut. All right, so what we're gonna do at the end of our fire line is we are going to tie a bunch of unsightly, gross, big knots. And these knots are going to be hidden, so it's okay if they're big and ugly. They just have to be big enough that they will hold and stop the thread from going through our vegan suede. So I just tie a bunch of overhand knots over and over again because they're kind of clean and they're easy to tie. But you can tie whatever knots you want to tie. All right, so once you have kind of like a ball of knot on the end of your strand, what you can do is thread the needle onto the other side of your fire line. I always recommend for my new bead weavers or my new students that are working with fire line or stringing material where you're using a needle, I always recommend to string your needle about 1/3 of the way down your work. So now what we're going to do is we are going to pierce through right up at the top here. We're going to pierce down through the knot, and we are going to make sure that we are securing the knot somewhere. So find a place where you can kind of go in with the needle, and if one side of the needle looks a little sharper than the other, you can go ahead and switch to the other side of the needle. So we're piercing through some of this cord in order to make sure our knot grabs on. So pull all the way through until that knot just kind of disappears inside the other knot. All right, and when in doubt, what you can do is go back up through and then come back down through. And just, again, make sure you're kind of feeling like you're piercing through some of that vegan suede here. Now the vegan suede is really cool because it's nice and spongy, so it's really comfortable and flexible, but it's also really easy to pierce through with the fire line. Okay, so at this point, we should have our thread coming out of the bottom of our work, like that. And now what we're gonna do is prepare our beads. So we're gonna set this work to the side and we're gonna start looking at some of our beads. So you can see here in this sample pendant that I have here that I've used a variety of sizes and shapes and colors of beads, and that creates a really cool, unique texture to your work. Now you can of course do this pendant in whatever style you want, but I like kind of the casual funky mix of the materials that we're using here. So to give you an idea of what I've used in that pendant, I have some Delica beads. These are size 11 Delica beads. I also have some bugle beads, some long magatama beads, some size 11 rocailles, some size 15 rocailles, some 6s. So you can really mix it up and just use whatever you want. This is also a great project for you to use the little leftover bits that are in your tubes, where if it's not enough for a full project, this is a really great project to use those leftover bits. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to start with my little decorative topper. And that little decorative topper on this one is a magatama bead. It's just something to kind of like cover that little hole there where it wouldn't make sense for us to do a bunch of beadwork. So you can use like a flat daisy spacer, but I'm going to go with a magatama. So to prep my work, what I'm going to do to make sure that my thread is coming out where I want it to come out, I'm going to kind of go through the back and pierce right here and come out of the suede. So I'm coming out of kind of like the center of the side of the suede, as you can see there. And pull your work tight, but not so tight that we start to change the natural teardrop shape here. Sorry, I'm working from home and my dishwasher's beeping. So now what we're going to do is pick up a magatama and a size 11 and a size 15. Let's go with a bright yellow size 15 this time. We're going to slide all of this down towards your work. And then what we're going to do here is skip that size 15, but we're gonna go through the size 11 and through the magatama again. And then we're going to kind of pierce through right the opposite side of where we came through on the other side. All right, so you can see here that I have pierced through right there, and my thread is coming out of the back of the suede. So what I'm gonna do is work on tightening this magatama here so that it just sits flat right there, and then that little 15 is kind of what catches the work and stops it from falling off. So just adjust your tension and kind of make sure everything is sitting right. And then we're gonna start the ladder stitch. So what we're gonna do to create the beadwork is going to feel really familiar if you ever made those cord and bead wrap bracelets that I believe Chan made popular years ago. They're still popular, but it's a really cool technique, and the technique is like a ladder stitch. So essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the cord around from the back, and we're going to figure out how many beads we want to cross over this section here. So I'm going to start with some of my size 15 seed beads, and I'm going to put 5 of them on to start. So I'm going to add 5 of them onto my needle. And what I usually like to do is I just kind of lay them across and make sure, I lost one. But I lay them across and I make sure that I have the right number of seed beads for the space that I'm trying to fill. So you can see here that I do. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to bring my needle around. I'm going to hold those beads in place. I'm going to bring my needle around the other cord here. I'm going to bring my thread in front. I'm going to bring my needle behind the cord, and I'm going to go through these 5 seed beads. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm making a loop around this cord with my loop of fire line. So in order to secure that loop, I'm going to go back through these 5 size 15 seed beads. And when I tighten it, it's really going to anchor everything in place. But it's important to make sure that you anchor it so that your tension is correct, and also so that your beads are sitting flat and uniform. So keep these beads inside the frame and tighten everything so that it's not only tight on this side, but it's also going to be tight on this side as well. So just work with it and adjust your tension. All right, so then what I'm going to do to lock everything in place is I'm going to take my thread around the back side of this side of the cord as well, and then go back through those seed beads to travel my thread to the other side. Now it's important to make sure that we are not skipping any of those seed beads, so make sure you've gone through all 5, and we can go around the back side or the front side of your cord. It doesn't matter. Just whatever you choose, be consistent with it, and you'll get the cleanest result. So again, pull your tension uniform, and you'll start to see as we work that you're going to have little V's coming out of every other section of beads. So just make sure that your beadwork is straight across. And then when we kind of slide that magatama down, you only see a bit of 15s peeking out, but it's a nice way to kind of finish the top. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to pick another style of beads to add on. So this time let's do some delicas. Now the delicas in the size 11s are bigger than the size 15s. So I'm thinking we can use the same number of beads this time as we did in the last row. So I'm gonna pick up 5 delicas, and I'm gonna pick this bone color here. Now you might notice the camera focusing in and out. These little itty bitty seed beads are smaller than what we are used to showing in a lot of our videos. So bear with us if you see a little bit of wobbliness in the focus. So what we're gonna do, just to check to make sure this is the right number, is we're gonna just line that up underneath there. Yep, that looks perfect. So I've got 5 of those 15s. I'm sorry, 5 of those 15 rocailles, and I have 5 of the delica 11s. All right, so my thread is over here. Now what I'm going to do is bring my needle around in front of this side of the cord over here. So around in front and then in back. And we're gonna see that those beads are gonna lay right across the middle with a little bit of guidance. So we always wanna make sure to kind of place the beads where we want them to go before we pull anything tight. And that's going to make sure that we don't have to fight it to undo anything. All right, so I have my beads laid right across the middle there. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go through those 5 beads back in the opposite direction. So we're just kind of forming figure 8s around the cord. What's different about this than the traditional wrap style bracelets is just that we're kind of changing the number of beads and kind of the shape of our form in order to get that cool teardrop effect. So make sure that we're not only pulling our tension tight on this side, but also on this side. And then when we do that next row, it's really gonna lock everything into place. Remember though, we don't wanna pull too much tension out of it because we wanna keep the natural teardrop shape that that cord is wanting to hold. All right. So now what we're gonna do is bring our thread around the back of the leather cord or our vegan suede cord, and we are going to go through those 5 as well. So go through the 5 back behind the suede, just like that. I like to kind of use my thumb like this to hold the beads in place as I'm pulling, and that makes sure that nothing really goes anywhere, and then adjust where that thread lands, and then we can kind of cinch our rows up together if need be, or we can just let them fall natural. It's totally up to you. So next I'm going to do a striped row. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some 15s and delicas in an every other fashion. So I'm gonna pick up one of my cranberry colored 15s from down here and a delica, and I'm just gonna do every other until I have enough to fill the blank. All right, so that should be enough. We always want to kind of lay it across to double check to make sure we've got the right size. And as long as we're pretty close to perfect, we are good. So again, our thread is coming out of the back of our cord this time. So we're going to lay our beads across that spot there, coming across the front. I'm going to hold on to those beads. I'm going to pull my thread and go across the front of this side of the cord and then behind the cord. And I'm going to go through those beads that I'm holding secure in that spot there. Make sure you're going through all of them. Don't skip any of them. And we can come out of either the front or the back. Doesn't really matter. Like I said, just be consistent. And then pull tight. Now notice how again I'm holding my thumb over those beads so that they don't hop out of our cord base or our cord form. All right, so to lock this row in, what I'm going to do is take my needle around the front, around the back of this side of the cord, and I am going to go through those beads until I reach the other side. So we're kind of working back and forth here. And this time I want to come out the back and lock that in. Adjust your tension, keep it tight. And then we can kind of adjust anything so that our rows are uniform and our loops on the side here are nice and flat. So what's great about the kind of casual nature of this design is that even if your tension is slightly uneven, it is no big deal. It'll look great no matter what. So I'm bringing my cord around the back to the front again, and I'm going to do a row of 11s now. So I'm just going to do a solid row. So I am going to string those 11s down to my work. I'm going to let them lay right across in that blank spot there beneath my last row, and I'm going to hold on to them with my thumb. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go across the front of this side of the cord, around the back, and going towards the opposite direction. And I'm going to go through those 11s. And then again, I'm going to lock that row in by bringing my fire line here around the back. And I'm going to go through those 11s. I'm going to secure them in place by switching to the other side. Okay, so let's do something fun with this next row. Let's do a bugle bead. So I'm going to not just do a bugle bead. I think I'm going to do a size 15 and then a bugle bead and another size 15. So we are going to hold that beaded section in place, pull the thread out, and then bring our thread in front and then behind, and then go back to the other side and continue working. All right, so now what I'm going to do is lock this row in just like I did with the other ones by bringing the cord around the front and around the back. Yep, through the 15, through the bugle bead, through the 15 again, and then behind our cord. Alrighty, so we're gonna pull that tight and adjust the tension of that loop. So you can see we have pretty clean tension so far. That's our goal. We want to start to see those V's form. And we won't see those V's on every row, but every other row. So you can see on this side, we've got V's every other row, and same on this side. And then whatever's on the opposite of that row, so like I've got a V on this side and just a straight line following that row on the other side. All right, so now what we're gonna do is, let's do a row of bigger beads. So what I like to do if I am gonna use some bigger beads is I like to space them out with smaller beads. So when I'm using these 6s, it looks just kind of big and bold and unfinished if I just do a big clunky row of 6s. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use 4 6s, but in between each of these 6s, I'm gonna put a size 11. Okay, so let's do a really fun row here. I'm gonna try a row of the magatamas. Now the magatamas are tricky because you have to string them in the correct direction in order for them to lay nice and uniform. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I've strung 2 magatamas, and you can see they're pointing in opposite directions. So that's not what I want. I want them all to string on in this direction so that they sit and kind of look like feathers almost, or like leaves. So take some care in the direction that you string your magatamas on, and then you'll notice a nicer, more uniform look. So I'm going to keep this row pretty loose, and that's because I kind of want some movement with my magatamas. So you can see that there's some space between here, but I'll have some movement, and then they'll also kind of lay down flat when I want them to lay down flat. All right, so my thread is on this side of my work now, which means I'm going to string my beads down and lay my beadwork across in front of my frame, and I'm going to bring my thread across the front over here, and then behind and through all of those magatamas. Now, when you're using the magatamas like this, you have to get your tension right manually. So you have to set your tension by hand. You cannot rely on the size of your row to set your tension, and that's because they wiggle all over the place. So you have to pay extra close attention with this row if you're using magatamas or anything similar to this, like drops or anything with some movement and some odd shapes to it. And you'll be much happier with your result if you take the extra time to set that tension so that it is the way you want it to be. All right, so I am happy with that. What I'm gonna do is set my row. So I'm going to bring my thread around and make sure I'm looping around the side of my cord, go through my row again, and set my tension. All right, so that locks it in place. Oh, I'm happy with that. I think that looks great. All right. So what we're gonna do is set another row, but I'm gonna make sure my thread's coming out of the back just because it's easier for me to work that way. So if you notice you've come out the wrong side, no big deal, just move your thread to the other side of your work and your life will be easier. All right, so I am happy with the tension that I have gotten here. I'm going to keep repeating some of these same techniques that I used up at the top to fill in the space here. But when I get to the bottom, what I'll do is I'll come back and kind of show you some fun and easy ways to fill in the bottom. You can of course stop wherever you want. You don't have to fill in this entire frame. It looks really cute if you just kind of go halfway or 2/3 of the way down. It looks great. But I'm going to show you how to do the whole thing now. I don't know how many of you saw my really cool necklace that I'm wearing because my hair's covering it and it's on a graphic tee. But that's just kind of the point. It looks good with absolutely anything that you're wearing. This is the project that we did in our last video. This is probably the easiest DIY jewelry that you could ever make. This is one of my favorite necklaces to wear because it looks good with absolutely anything and because it's so casual and easy. This is our DIY knotted pearl necklace. So if you're interested in learning how to do this necklace, check out the link below. And we are back. It is a completely different day, but thanks to the magic of video editing, it's the same day for you. So we are back with probably a little bit more cat hair on the mat, but let's resume. So as you can see, I've added a few more rows. Now I'm getting to the point where my work starts to taper in a little bit. So what I'm gonna do now that I'm adding a row where the cord is starting to go in is I'm gonna add fewer beads in my row, or I'm gonna create a row that is a little bit shorter. That way I can keep the natural progression of the shape of my cord. So don't continue to form this into a triangle. We want to kind of keep it a teardrop. If you have to kind of make it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller in order to compensate for your bead sizes, in order to keep your pattern, you can fudge on it a little bit, but you want to kind of make it right in your next row. So I'm going to go in with a shorter row. I'm going to bead that, and I will be right back with you. All right, so you can see that I have a row here that is just about perfect for where we're going. But like I said, we want to keep this row a little bit shorter. So what I'm going to do is take my outer 2 beads off of each side. I'm going to show you a trick. Don't tell anyone that I showed this to you, because this is dangerous. Make sure you're wearing glasses or have your eyes covered and your work surface protected. Pow. Okay, so pretend that didn't happen. Oh, look at that. I have a mistake in my work anyway, so I have to unstring it anyway. Very distracted by these cat hairs on my mat. But anyway, I'm going to pull those beads off, pick up that bead that I could have just moved from the end, and slide that back on. There we go. Okay. So now we have the perfect size to start to kind of taper down our work just a little bit. So as you can see, my thread is coming from the back side. As you can see, if this will focus. So as you can see, the thread is coming from the back side of my work. So that of course means I'm going to thread my work around to the front and across the top. So I'm going to string my beads down to the bottom and lay them across the top. I'm going to hold on to them, bring my work around the top, and then come in from the back side bottom. So you can see my thread is coming across the top and my needle is looping around that side of the cord and going in through the bottom. And again, tension from here on out is just as important as it was before. Probably even more important now because we're starting to make that taper. And we're just going to do the same thing that we did before, where we lock this row in by going around it and back through to the other side. So I'll come back to you when I have that done. All right, so now we're going to keep getting smaller and smaller with our design until we have a design that fills in the blank perfectly. So it's just really trial and error. Just have to string and unstring designs until you are happy with the look and it fits perfectly. All right, I think that one does the trick. Getting awfully yellow here at the bottom. Oh well, we'll counteract that with the next row. So you can see how I'm kind of gently letting the cord do its thing here at the bottom in regards to the direction that it's going to sit in. The cord will kind of want to twist so that it sits sideways here at the bottom. And you can let it do that because we're not going to be attaching anything here at the bottom. And so it'll just kind of form however it wants to, really. But as for this area here, just kind of be intentional with where or which direction the cord is sitting. So basically what I'm trying to say is when you tighten your loops on either side, just make sure that you've tightened them consistently on either side. So like if this one is slightly twisted back to allow this side to be sideways, do the same thing on the other side so that it matches well, and so that you don't have a weird, awkward, bunched area on one side and not the other. All right, now if you notice that any of your strands are starting to kind of bow down like this one is here, an easy fix for that is just to adjust your tension tighter. So the tighter you pull the tension in this row, the more likely it will be to sit straight. The other problem that will cause that is if you have too many beads in your row. So of course the solution for that is to undo that row and redesign it so that you have fewer beads or smaller beads. Now you can see I have room here for about 2 more rows in here. It might look like I have enough room for 3 more rows. However, we're just going to leave this bottom section empty. There's not really a good place to grip on. We might even just do 1 more row. We'll see how it goes. But as we do the rows, it'll kind of reform the cord, so we'll get a better idea of basically what we're doing as we go. So I am going to get a couple more beads and we will fill in that row. Should we do one more row? Should we not? I don't know. So what's cool about this design is that the vegan suede is kind of grippy. So normally in designs like this, you wouldn't want to secure down at the bottom of the cord just because there's not enough tension and grip to hold it on and to hold your rows in place. However, since this is kind of spongy and grippy, you can go down a little farther than you normally would. But for me, my decision is just whether or not I think it would look good. I don't know. How about pause the video right now before I make my decision and let me know in the comments below if you think I should do one more row. So after you've left your comment, you can come back and see what I decided to do. All right, I think we're gonna go for one more row. Let's see. Now I feel like I'm under a lot of pressure to decide what to put. I think I'm gonna do 15s and then these pretty little delicates again. Cool, alrighty, let's go for it. Now, before you do your final row, you wanna kind of adjust tension for everything, make sure everything is right in place, because once you set this row, this last row, you have kind of locked everything in where it's gonna go. Your first and your last row kind of determine the tension for everything. So you want to make sure truly that we have room for this final row. So just kind of hold everything straight, give it a little bit of a wiggle, make sure there's room for everything, and we will attempt to place that final row. So what we're going to do is the same thing that we've done throughout this entire process. We're just gonna lock it in. We're just gonna be super careful with where we place our cord on either side and super careful with our tension. And then I'll show you how to finish it off. All right, so I just finished locking my final row in place, and what I'm going to do to finish everything off is I'm gonna bring the needle back through those beads just like I did on the row before. But this time I'll have V's on both sides of my work, and that's gonna lock it in, and it's also gonna help to make it look more symmetrical. So I doubt anyone would look that closely, but I do. I look that closely at people's jewelry. So make sure they're even, adjust everything. And now what you're gonna do is you are going to loop between those threads here. So I'm gonna take my needle in right underneath that thread on the back, and before this little hole disappears, before that loop disappears, I'm gonna take my needle through it. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm tying a half hitch knot on the back. So before you lock this up, make sure your tension is perfect. Don't pull too tight and throw your tension out of whack. Now you can tie a couple of these, you can do a surgeon's knot, whatever you want to do to kind of get rid of this thread. But just make sure wherever you're tying it that it's hidden on the back or kind of like between these seams here. So that's really it. And then if you want to, you can trim this thread down. You can hide it back between some of these beads and trim it close so it's really out of the way. I'm just going to trim mine flat. And my scissors is gone because, like I said, I'm filming on another day, so I'm going to use my junky old wire cutters that I have had for, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years. There we go. And once we sort everything out from me handling it roughly, we have a beautiful, funky, finished pendant. So last step is optional. You can take some glue in on a toothpick or a paper clip or a spare head pin, or if you have a needle tip glue, you can just go in and kind of glue the knot here at the top. But like I said, this suede is really kind of spongy and grippy, so it's not entirely necessary. Thanks so much everyone for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to give us a big thumbs up. It really helps our channel out. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or if you just want to say hi, you can drop a comment down below the video. I do my best to respond to everybody's questions and comments. Make sure to head on over to Facebook and join our Facebook group called the Bead Place. We post pictures of upcoming projects. A lot of our group members post pictures of what they're currently working on. It's a place to ask questions, just a lot of fun. Also, feel free to check us out on Patreon. Patreon's a way to support our channel beyond your subscription here on YouTube. And if you need to pick up any of the materials that we used today to create your very own pendant, you can check out the links below or head on over to beadplace.net. So remember, please like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, leave a comment, and make sure to head on over to Facebook, like us, and you know, join our group, join the fun. Thanks for watching.